Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. Hey y'all, welcome back to an episode of the Black Doctor Collective podcast. I always want to do these I don't know if you guys know Jackie Aina. She's a Nigerian American, one of the original beauty vloggers on YouTube, made a bajillion dollars off of YouTube. She was one of the first Black women to really talk about makeup for dark skin. And she always does these really fun, get ready with me. She's sitting down, she's chatting, she's putting on makeup, she's doing her wigs, whatever. I always want to do that. First of all, problem with that is I don't wear makeup in real life and I don't wear wigs in real life. So what would we be doing while you get ready with me? I don't know. But it seems like that would lead for some visual interest on the podcast, right? You would think. Anyway, that's not what today's episode is about. I am going to talk about this post that I responded to on Facebook from a doctor. So I always am on, perusing through Facebook, and every once in a while, either someone messages me or in some of the physician groups I'm in, someone brings up a topic that's pretty close to what I already discussed here, or they're asking a question, and I usually chime in and try to provide some kind of support in that way. So I was reading a Facebook post from this doctor who is, I think, on a sabbatical. Her post starts off #life after a sabbatical. And she says, I feel guilty for not wanting to work full-time anymore. That's common. My folks don't understand how it's okay to take off months at a time. I don't think they get it, which is probably true. Our calling can cause soul fatigue, deep burnout, and honestly, many people talk about how sabbaticals gave them clarity, but for me, it has given me more questions. Love this. If you're questioning your career path, you're not alone. Facts. It's okay to not have all the answers. Your path might not be a straight line. Your healing and recovery might take more than a year. You're not broken. You're a good doctor. You deserve rest. You deserve time to answer the questions in your heart and peace. And if you never did another thing, you are already accomplished. You have already done enough. First of all, can we get a moment to appreciate the level of vulnerability, of insight that is in this post? Because this post is a banger, okay? We're going to spend a little time dissecting this, and I'm going to tell you how I responded to her. But for a doctor to, first of all, recognize where she is, recognize the burnout, take a sabbatical, which, she says, people don't often understand in your life why you need to do the things you're doing. And then at the end of the sabbatical, not gaslight herself into thinking, well, I've taken enough time, so I should have the answers. I should have figured this out. She's acknowledging that actually at the end of it, she has even more questions, which is what happens when you actually have time to think. And then she goes on to just drop a whole bunch of really good insight, advice on all of that. And I want to spend a lot of time in this post because there's just so many nuggets here and they just totally align with everything we talk about on this podcast. So first, I'll share with you that I responded to her and I said, I switched to part-time immediately after training. I started with 4 days and now I'm down to 2 because I was so burnt out. And if you guys have been here, you know the story, right? I was so burnt out. I took a 2-month break before I even applied for this part-time job. And I've taken a lot of breaks in between to really just get myself back to feeling like a human being. And I said part-time was the only way I'd be able to actually not hate medicine and also be replenished enough to do a great job. And there's such a difference in my energy and my attitude that I get comments from patients and staff alike saying how refreshing it is to work with me and how, because I'm locums and per diem, it's not like they know me for a long time, but they can already sense my attitude in a short encounter. Okay, I'm going to stop there on my response. But when I think about her post, so many doctors, first of all, are in the space of, I just need to push through, or I still need to keep earning my dues, despite having gone through the gauntlet of medical school, residency, some of us fellowship. We still, for some reason, think we need to be earning our dues. Like, how long does it take to earn these dues? Are the dues in the room with us? Because why are we still here trying to earn what we've already earned? So that being the status quo, the culture of medicine, so often, my little New York accent came out often. That being the culture of medicine is sometimes very hard, even if you feel differently, even if you know that this is like not something you want to push through. It's not something that you want to keep earning dues on. It is so hard to know what to do next because most people are not in that moment of realization. Most people are either not aware of why they feel so burnt out or not aware that they're burnt out at all. I mean, some people are happy, sure, but the people who are not happy, sometimes there's just no awareness. And then if they are aware, they think that they need to work harder. They think they need to keep pushing. They think they need to earn dues, stay in the game, sacrifice themselves. There's so much of this pervasive self-sacrifice culture that if you as an individual feel like, oh my God, I just need to get out of here, it is so hard to know what to do. So taking a break, first of all, I highly recommend taking breaks. 10 out of 10. Do it every time. You will never regret it, right? It's like you will never regret a vacation. You just don't. It is hard to get there. I can acknowledge that it is hard to say, like, I need to take a break, especially when you don't know what that's going to look like. So I don't know how long this person's sabbatical is. If you see me referencing to my left, it's because my phone is sitting here and I'm reading the post that I'm talking about. So, and if you're listening to the podcast, you didn't see me looking or gesturing. So it doesn't matter to you anyway. But it is so difficult to decide to take a break because of all the reasons, right? Like, what are people going to think? What's going to happen to my patients? Am I going to keep this job? Like, there's so much uncertainty around taking a break. And I'm not talking about just using your vacation time. I mean, I'm talking about people who are taking sabbaticals, like extended leaves. Because 2 weeks, if you're truly burnt out, ain't gonna cut it. Especially if it's 2 weeks and you're coming right back into the same environment that totally burnt you out. So this person took a break. I don't know how long. And she feels like at the end of this break, she has even more questions than when she started. And I say to that, thank God. Because that means, again, you are really actually reflecting on what you need. And you're not selling yourself on this notion of healing having a finite time, right? It's almost like grief. When people are grieving, it's like when something happens, it's okay to be sad. People totally get that you're sad. And then, after some time, they're still like, sorry, but they expect you to kind of perk back up. And if you don't start to show resolution, right, in a specific time frame that people think has exceeded the normal grief time frame, doesn't even matter who died for you, right? They don't care. But if it exceeds what their thought or their idea of that period of time, appropriate period of time is, people start losing their patience with you. And I think that filters into how we even treat ourselves, because you start to tell yourself that, oh, a certain amount of time is too much time, or people are not going to understand if I take a certain amount of time. And also, when you go to ask for it, you'll probably undercut how much time you actually need, or you'll convince yourself that you don't need as much time. Or if somebody gives you pushback on the amount of time you're asking for, you're likely to cave because you're like, oh my God, of course it is too much time. I also agree that it's too much time. If you believed that it was not enough time, you wouldn't cave, right? Like, it's all about our underlying beliefs. But there is no set perfect time frame for you to recover from burnout. There just isn't. And so you have to factor in what you need. And that includes financial needs, right? Because not all of us can always afford to just hop, skip, and jump out of the workplace for an indefinite period of time. That is true. But also, then how do you protect yourself? How do you figure out how much time to take, what that time should look like, how to utilize it best? Because that's us as doctors, right? Like, we want to know how to do the right thing, the most efficient, the best way, all of that. And then return to work, because we want to return to the status quo. Being outside of the status quo can be so stressful. So to that, I say, you got to give yourself more grace. And also, if you're rushing to return to the environment that burned you out, you're only going to deepen your burnout. So super proud of this person for acknowledging that, like, yeah, she took this time, and her time does not look like what others looks like, where they had clarity, right? I hate that word, clarity, because like everyone's chasing clarity. No one knows what it actually looks like. And it's also just like a symptom of perfectionism. And it leaves you stuck because you don't feel like you can move forward unless you're absolutely certain about the next steps. And that's just not how the world works. And it's not how life works. And it's like a fallacy, right? It's like finding the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Like, it's just not there. Okay, so this person says it's just given her more questions. And I really hope at the end of this that she continues to give herself the kind of grace that she needs to continue asking those questions and finding the space to answer those questions for herself. So that's her first part of her post. Then she goes on to kind of give some camaraderie to the audience, right? So she says, if you're questioning your career path, you're not alone. That is such a normal thing, especially in medicine. I think it's very hard for people outside of medicine to think that doctors question their path, because we have been pedestalized as doctors. Everyone thinks it's like the best career. You're amazing. You're so smart. You're so successful. You've made it. And not realizing that there's a cost to it. And so when you get to the mountaintop and it is the top of the Rockies and it's freezing cold and it doesn't look like a day in the sunshine you thought it would, it is totally okay to question that. And to understand that through these questions, you actually have the opportunity to shape your career and create something new that works for you, that supports you, and in turn, supports the people around you. I say that from my experience in working part-time, in creating the career that I've created for myself. Two major things have happened. One, my patient care, my patient interaction is significantly different, improved, because I have time to think. I have time to ask questions. I have time to educate my patients. I have time to create connections. The patient care is just different. It's just better. And I'm happier in that environment. I think that my longevity in medicine is extended, right? I'm going to be in medicine longer because I've paced myself. If I had continued on the path that I was on when I finished fellowship, I would have already quit and been working somewhere else. Let's be real. Like, medicine was trash full-time. Oh my gosh. Honestly, for those of you working full-time, I don't know how you're doing it. Maybe it works for you. It definitely did not work for me. The other benefit is that I had the space to become creative. Like, I'm here on a podcast. right? I am coaching other doctors in two different forums. I coach doctors as a business coach in the Doctor Coach School, and I coach my own individual clients as part of the Black Doctor, the Any Day Negotiator group coaching program. That would never have happened if I hadn't taken a step back to think about what I needed, create the space for figuring it out, create the time to ask questions, because I had a lot of questions. All of this, basically the lifestyle that I have now, the coaching and the podcasting and all of that came from questions that I had when I was looking at how to operate in medicine and why it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. The question for me was, how come everybody's so unhappy? Why do we have so many burned out doctors? Where have we lost autonomy and how can we reclaim it? If we reclaimed this autonomy, if we got to decide, got to choose what balance looks like, would we last longer? Would medicine change? And I say from my own personal experience, and maybe it's very anecdotal, but absolutely. Absolutely. Medicine will change as we get to decide, we get to step up, we get to, choose what's best for us and therefore what's best for the patient. All of that will totally shift the culture of medicine. So, two definitive positive benefits for questioning my career. And I still don't have all the answers. She says, it's okay not to have all the answers. Your path may not be a straight line. Your healing and recovery might take more than a year. Honestly, I think that has surprised me because even now, I graduated fellowship in 2021. It's now 2025. Even now, 3.5 years out, I still have more questions. My path continues to evolve. Things continue to be uncertain. I don't know if you guys listened to last episode where I started talking about this current negotiation I'm in with the clinic that I've been in all year and the development of a leadership opportunity within that clinic, me creating that role and then fulfilling it. Not something I expected. I think year to year, which is something so unusual for me because I love a plan and I love to stick to a plan and I love like concrete things. That's my idea of certainty and security. It makes me feel safe is to like know what's coming next. The fact that every single year since I graduated fellowship has looked completely different is not a life I would have envisioned for myself. I did not know that that's what was coming. And actually, it's been really fun and beautiful and sometimes scary and sometimes unpredictable in not a great way, right? But I'm actually happy I'm doing it because all of the decisions are derived from a place of I am trying to preserve myself. I'm trying to heal myself. I am making decisions day to day, month to month that assess what's happening in my life, that assesses my needs. And my needs are changing, right? Like I am growing, I'm changing. We're always growing and changing. The idea that we could choose one thing and it just be for the entire year, 5 years, 10 years, decade, whatever, doesn't allow us room to evolve the way we really need to evolve. So I think her sentiment around your path is not a straight line, however scary that sounds and sometimes feels, is a great thing. And that the recovery takes longer than a year. Yeah, I mean, I'm still recovering because medicine continues to still be abusive, right? It's like I'm still in bed with an abusive lover, right? Like there's a love-hate relationship here. And so I'm navigating a system while trying to figure out how to not be impacted by the blows and also shield the people around me from the blows, like my coworkers, my patients, even my family. Because an unhappy me in my family and my household is like unhappiness is contagious, right? It impacts the entire environment. I know doctors for whom they're so stressed out that they carry that home. They may not carry patient things home, like the stress of an actual case, but the stress of the job, right? The expectation, the burden of it, they carry home and they are so unhappy with their lives and it's impacting their spouses, their children. In my case, like my mom lives upstairs in my house, like my relationship with anybody in my household, my relationship with my partner, like all of these things come out of how I feel at work, which is where a lot of us spend the bulk of our days, the most of our time. She says, you are not broken. And we're not. Just because we don't follow the exact step-by-step things does not mean we're broken. Just because we need a break does not mean we are broken. In fact, taking breaks is what prevents us from breaking. You're still a good doctor. You deserve rest. Now listen, one thing I love to talk about on this show is deserving rest. Okay? There are 7 days of the week. This comes from basically biblical instruction. One of those days is to rest. God rested. How you not gonna rest? Are you better than God? I don't think so. And like, why would he create us to rest? Why are a third of our day, 8 hours and 24 hours, is supposed to be spent sleeping, resting? It's like our body was made for that. We've adapted for a lot of things. We have figured out ways how to get food on a consistent basis, how to have shelter on a consistent basis, to not have to brave the elements. We have figured out a ways to almost not do anything, right? Like we've automated so many processes. All of these things are things we didn't have to do. We automated them. There's no replacement for sleep. Tell me one thing in your life that you can replace. Heck, if you don't want to eat, you could put in some TPN, okay? You could get some fluids and a TPN running, and eventually, obviously, your body doesn't do that great because, TPN has its side effects, but for non-medical people, this is total parenteral nutrition where you receive like fats and proteins and electrolytes through a IV line or a central line directly into the bloodstream. So you don't even have to eat. We've created something for that, but there is no advancement that replaces sleep. You can drink all the coffee you want. At some point, you will go crazy without sleep. So the fact that we have created a culture where we have to relearn that rest is not earned is like wild, right? Like capitalism and white supremacy, but that's how we got to this place. We deserve rest. We don't just deserve it. It's a necessity. It is like a mandated part of our life. And beyond just sleep, we deserve days of rest, wakeful resting, intentional resting. One of the favorite realizations I had, I think I read this somewhere when I was, I don't even know how old, but years ago, like more than a decade ago, was this concept of like, just because I'm not busy doesn't mean I want to do something, like I need to fill that time, which was such a novel concept to me as a 20-something. It's like you're obligated to do something if you're free. Like if someone's like, oh, what are you doing? And you're like, nothing. Then they're like, oh, great. And they want to come up with something to fill your time. And so I remember trying to come up with things to say or like, why, what's up? Like you answer that question with so much hesitance because you want to be able to say you're doing something so that person would leave you alone. Right? And you didn't have to argue about why you're not available for that person when the only thing you wanted to do was rest. Because saying I'm resting or I just want to sit around was not a good enough reason to not do whatever the person was asking you for. So that notion of just because I'm free doesn't mean I want to do something was so novel to me. I just remember having that moment of like, oh my God, yes, I literally want to veg out or do nothing or just not be committed to anything. Like I want to sit on my couch and eat a cookie and watch Netflix. Like I should be able to do that without disturbance, right? So I want to say it's not just about sleeping, like rest during sleep. It's also about like restful waking periods, times, days where you just get to do absolutely nothing. You're not committed to anything. That's it, right? And in that space, that's when the questions come up. And that's when you can work on the answers too, right? Letting your brain just be creative, just be curious. That is where you're going to find it. Because in that time when you're doing nothing, when you're not committed, when you're not trying to figure out how to be the most productive person every single day, every single minute, you get to stop and think about what you enjoy, or you get to actually do things that you enjoy. And when it comes time to decide, what else do I want to do outside of medicine? What else do I want to do with my life? Or what hobbies do I want to develop? That's where you're going to find the answers. It's like, okay, well, when I have the day off and I have nothing to do, for those of us who have that luxury, because not everybody has that luxury, but when I have nothing to do, or when I think about doing nothing, what am I actually doing? Like, what am I spending my time doing? For some of it's sleep because you're so damn exhausted and you haven't slept properly since 1995 when they had nap times in kindergarten. Like, some of us, it's rest. But after you've fully rested, what do you envision for yourself? That is how you're going to find those answers, is actually resting, having wakeful rest, having time to recoup, time where you're not sitting lamenting over what happened in the clinic this week, what did Nurse Kathy say, and who's a little bit racist, and who questioned who, and who disrespected you and thought you were the cleaning person instead of the doctor. Like, when you get out of these environments and you can actually properly think and reflect on what you want in your life, and you're not spending all this time thinking about rebuttals in your head or trying to heal from the abuses of the week, you will discover an entirely different side of your life. You are a good doctor. You are a good human. And humans need rest, both asleep and awake. And I love how she ends this, and this is also how I'm going to end this, is if you never did another thing, you are already accomplished. You already have done enough. If you never practice medicine again, if you never worked another day in your life, you are enough. If you were, God forbid, to have an accident where you couldn't work, you still deserve. You still deserve. And not just because people think, oh, well, she can't. You also can make that choice of, I don't want to. We're going into 2025 with an attitude of, if we don't want to, and if it does not move us towards the types of lives we're trying to live, we're not doing it. Because we deserve. If you never worked, if you never doctored another day, it is not your whole identity. If you never did another single thing, whether or not people around you understand it, whether or not people support it, you are enough and you have done enough. Have an amazing week. I hope you find some time to have some wakeful resting. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram at The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.